past, where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to row-wide facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The Bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome back to the Bullvine podcast. It's our big 2025 year in review deep dive.
Yep.
We are peeling back the layers on the data, the disruptive decisions, and honestly, some of the absolute disasters that define this year in the dairy world. This is all about identifying who survived and, well, who became a statistic.
And we're not pulling any punches today. We are breaking down the critical stories that separated the survivors from the statistics in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And a fair warning, if you found 2025 to be a struggle, some of this analysis on, structural failures and delayed consequences is going to be uncomfortable listening.
It has to be. We have to look at the huge celebratory wins, the immediate cash flows, and then immediately pivot to the quiet structural issues that are going to cost producers dearly in 2026 and beyond.
And we have to start right there with the anchor statistic that should frankly be echoing in every single barn in North America.
Hit us with it.
The high-end estimate is that Holstein inbreeding has already cost U.S. dairies a colossal $6.7 billion.
$6.7 billion. This isn't a theory about margin fluctuation. This is a measurable financial hit. This is money that was left on the table because of breeding decisions or failures to make crucial decisions that started years ago.
That is the core problem that nobody seems to be paying enough strategic attention to right now.
Right.
Especially because the entire year of 2025 was dominated by this incredible tension. On one hand, you had this massive, almost universal celebration of immediate verified cash flow from beef on dairy premiums.
It was the financial lifeline of the year for so many operations. You got that $800, maybe $1,000 for a crossbred calf on day 3.
Immediate cash.
Immediate cash, zero rearing costs, minimal death loss risk on the farm. That felt like a huge strategic win for short-term survival.
It absolutely was a win, but while everyone was busy counting those $1,000 checks, something insidious was happening in the background, quietly eating away at future profitability. You look at the USDA data from November 2025.
You saw this.
Replacement heifer costs quietly hit a national average of $2,870 per head.
And that's just the average. If you're running a large operation in high-demand areas like California or Texas or certain pockets of the Midwest, you are regularly exceeding $3,200.
Oh, easily.
You are literally watching the industry celebrate a $1,000 gain today while simultaneously signing up for a $3,000 liability in the next 2 years.
It's the classic failure of vision. You fix today's cash problem by trading away tomorrow's equity.
Yep.
And while this was happening, the industry spent the entire year debating TPI rankings. Which bull was up, which bull was down, but the underlying genetic foundation was decaying.
At an accelerating rate.
Inbreeding has jumped 168% since 2010. That's not a gradual slope. That's a structural cliff we are accelerating toward. And the $6.7 billion figure is the price tag of that decay.
So if you were one of the survivors this year, the one who navigated the feed price volatility and the unpredictable milk checks, you weren't just lucky, you were strategic, often making decisions contrary to the prevailing hype cycle.
And that's why this deep dive matters. We need to define that strategy for you.
Our mission today is to distill the playbook of those survivors. We've synthesized our 16 most read articles from the Bullvine this year, and they coalesce into 3 critical threads that define 2025 and must inform your 2026 plans.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, we're looking at the architects, the people who redefine success, often by challenging industry orthodoxy. Second, we'll analyze the bloodline's legendary genetics that survived and outlasted the evaluation systems that once dismissed them.
Good stuff.
And finally, we're hitting the battlefield, the relentless market forces like beef on dairy and industry consolidation that are demanding an immediate calculated response from every producer.
Okay, let's unpack this. The architects, the winners.
Right, let's get into it. The winners in 2025 weren't necessarily the ones who simply bought the highest ranked genomic sires. The true survivors built unique disciplined systems. They fundamentally challenged the assumption that you have to chase TPI to succeed.
And it's crucial we look at the scale of these successes immediately. That tells you whether the lesson is replicable for your 500 cow dairy, or if it's just a fascinating profile piece about people operating in a different universe entirely.
A perfect place to start, then, is with Juan Moreno and ST Genetics. This is a story about fundamental infrastructure change.
Right.
Moreno didn't just found a successful company, he fundamentally rewired the global plumbing of dairy genetics. We're talking about an operation with 1,800 employees spanning 16 countries.
The scale is huge.
And the impact is staggering. ST Genetics pioneered sex-sorted technology that is now responsible for roughly 30% of all semen sold globally.
30%. Think about what that number implies. That means ST Genetics has become the air supply for a third of the world's dairy breeding programs. When you control a technology like that, you dramatically reduce the genetic waste in the industry, forcing producers to be more efficient with their breeding decisions because they know precisely what they're getting. That's market power.
What I found most fascinating, given their technological dominance, was Moreno's disciplined restraint regarding genetic modification.
Okay.
He drew a hard line, stating, and I quote, "If they don't want to go any further with genetic modification, why on earth would we get involved with it as an industry? We're playing with fire by doing that."
That's interesting. So he's prioritizing commercial viability and farmer trust over chasing, maximum hype or scientific headlines.
Precisely. He was named World Dairy Expo's 2025 International Person of the Year because he delivered products that work, not just products that generate academic curiosity.
That disciplined restraint is a huge lesson. It's about building a sustainable business on proven results, not on theoretical future technologies.
Now, let's pivot from technology dominance to scale dominance with the McCarty family, who were named the 2025 Dairy Producer of the Year. This is the definition of scaling success beyond traditional farming models.
Oh yeah, their numbers are just staggering.
They run 15,000 cows across 4 Kansas sites, plus another 4,000 at MVP Dairy in Ohio, which, for context, is the largest registered Holstein herd globally.
The scale is astronomical. But as he said, the cow count isn't the winning factor.
Not at all.
The winning factor is the partnership with Danone. They aren't just shipping milk to a co-op. They control what happens to that milk afterward. They are vertically integrated, from feed to fermentation.
Vertical integration is the architecture of survival in the modern market, and the McCartys are the proof point. It allows them to manage milk, price volatility, control quality from the ground up, and essentially operate outside the crush of the volatile commodity market that destroys margins for most conventional producers.
Wait, hold up. This is where I have to step in with the 300 cow farmer's perspective.
Go for it.
The McCarty model requires resources and access most farms will never have. We're talking about needing Danone's direct line and the capital for $50 million worth of processing and logistics infrastructure.
Of course.
So is this genuinely a lesson we can apply, or is it just watching the Yankees win the World Series and hoping their playbook helps your local softball team?
That's the critical distinction, and we have to be clear. The lesson isn't replication, it's recognition.
Okay.
The McCartys are showing you that controlling the value chain is winning. If you can't replicate it at 15,000 cows, you need to understand the principles and apply them at your scale.
So how does that principle translate to the guy running 300 cows who's worried about his bank manager?
The small farm playbook is collaboration or niche positioning. If you can't own the processing plant, you have to find a co-op or group of farms that pools resources to negotiate specialized contracts. You need to control more of the value beyond the bulk tank, whether that's guaranteed component pricing or securing a contract for specialized milk like A2A2 or organic. That collective value control is the small-scale version of vertical integration.
That idea of collaboration being a structural solution leads us perfectly to the Genosource story.
It does.
If the McCartys are the outlier success story, Genosource is the accessible success story.
Absolutely. Genosource is the ultimate countermodel to consolidation. We talked about 8 Iowa farming families who pooled resources and knowledge back in 2014. They didn't have Danone backing. They had a shared goal and a collective investment in high-end genetics.
And the result was Genosource Captain. I mean, you have to talk about why his success was so unprecedented.
Genosource Captain was unbelievable because he held the #1 TPI for 7 consecutive proof runs. Let's just pause on that. 7 consecutive proof runs. In the genomic era, where genetic turnover is so rapid that the top bull today is often obsolete by tomorrow, achieving that kind of consistency is almost unheard of. He peaked at plus 3,441 TPI.
That longevity proves two things. First, that their initial genomic evaluation was incredibly accurate, and second, that there were deep functional traits ensuring he didn't crash once his daughters actually started milking.
The key scalable lesson for the 300-cow farmer is right there. Collective investment produces results that none of those individual breeders could have achieved alone. In an era where AI companies dominate, collaboration is not weakness, it is the accessible survival architecture.
And speaking of challenging the orthodoxy, let's bring in David Diamond in AG3 because his philosophy ties directly into the dangers of the genomic hype cycle.
Right. Diamond's model, while large, is built on a philosophy of consistency over unpredictability. He actively invests in cow families with proven, multi-generational longevity and functional purpose. He's deliberately avoiding the animals that rank highest purely on paper but lack maternal history.
He's the one betting on the cow, not the algorithm.
And his quote resonates deeply with the $6.7 billion cost of inbreeding. Genomics without performance verification is speculation compounded by more speculation. He's arguing that we get so caught up in the predictive power of a TPI number on a newborn calf that we forget the crucial check. Does the lineage actually produce cows that last through 6 lactations and handle stress?
That's this part that gets me. We use genomics to find new blood, which is fantastic, but the speed and high rankings encourage us to overuse those elite bloodlines, which inevitably leads to that massive inbreeding spike you detailed earlier. Diamond is forcing himself to maintain maternal line diversity as insurance.
The practical takeaway here is that the most profitable long-term herds blend both strategies. Use genomics for direction, finding the right new low-inbreeding blood to infuse, but maintain maternal line depth, verifying those cows actually perform. Don't put your entire herd's future on paper numbers from an animal that is still being raised in a hutch.
Okay, so let's flip that coin. We've talked about the winners. What about the failures?
Right, segment 2. We need to look at the failures that taught us more than the soaring successes. This is all about when ego beats judgment and how historical financial speculation is repeating itself today.
You can't talk about genetic speculation in the U.S. without talking about the Jack Stookey saga.
No, you can't.
That collapse still serves as the gold standard for how not to run a dairy business.
The Stookey empire was built on quicksand. It was constructed not on productive fundamentals, not on high milk checks or efficient feed conversion, but on financial maneuvering, speculation, and crucial tax incentives. We're specifically talking about the massive influence of Section 46.
For listeners who might not be familiar with that history, what exactly was Section 46 and why did it matter so much?
Section 46 was a tax provision, part of the investment tax credit back then, which allowed for rapid, sometimes immediate depreciation of capital assets.
Okay.
When the IRS designated high-value registered cattle as capital assets, it created the investor era in dairy cattle breeding.
So suddenly, these high-end registered cattle weren't just milk machines. They were massive tax shelters for high net worth individuals, doctors, lawyers, Wall Street guys who needed huge write-offs.
Precisely. It fundamentally decoupled the paper value of a cow from her actual productive value in the barn. Investors were incentivized to buy the most expensive animal possible based purely on a pedigree and hype because the tax savings were immediate.
Production was secondary.
Completely. When the tax incentives dried up and the financial reality hit, the entire speculative house of cards collapsed spectacularly, leaving creditors, neighbors, and many honest breeders bankrupt.
And the ultimate lesson there, which is ignored every generation, is that business models built solely on speculation always fail. You cannot sustain a productive farming enterprise on short-term financial maneuvering.
The deep irony, which we'll cover in a moment, is that the genetics often outlimit the financial folly. The Stookey Elm Park Black Rose cow family survived the bankruptcy. The genetics were sound. The business model was rotten to the core.
But the tragedy for 2025 is that the Stookey mentality, the belief that paper value and hype can replace actual productive performance, is still rampant.
It is. We saw multiple verified reports this year about genomic heifers selling for figures we haven't seen since the height of the investor era, easily reaching and sometimes exceeding 6 figures.
$100,000 or more.
For a calf.
Yeah.
And what were these sales based on?
High GTPI, Genomic Total Performance Index, and a high net merit score. Purely paper numbers, often from an animal just a few weeks old. They had absolutely zero milking records, no longevity data, no production verification. The farmer was buying a high-tech lottery ticket.
And what's your gut reaction when you see these sales happening today?
Honestly, it's disbelief mixed with frustration. We are still doing this. The Stookey collapse was based on gambling on paper pedigrees and tax write-offs. Today, we're gambling on algorithms and tax write-offs. The specific technological packaging changed, but the speculative psychology is identical.
That's exactly our conclusion in the Bullvine analysis. The packaging changed, the gamble didn't. The influence of the investor era and the Section 46 mentality is still driving decision-making, encouraging some breeders to prioritize paper hype and the potential for a quick six-figure flip over the functional, durable cow families that keep the milk checks coming for years.
And the risk isn't just that the calf buyer loses money. The risk is that the attention, the capital, and the genetic focus shift away from the functional animals that actually pay the bills, further accelerating that trend toward genetic uniformity and inbreeding.
That brings us perfectly to segment 3, genetics that outlasted everything.
The matriarchs.
The matriarchs cows, who were often dismissed by consensus because they didn't meet the current scorecard, but whose dynasties defied multiple evaluation systems. This is the ultimate lesson in trusting your eye over the room's opinion.
This is truly the heart of dairy breeding. This proves that sometimes the collective wisdom of the room is just flat out wrong, and the only thing that matters is the genetic power packed into that animal.
The ultimate example is Westwood HC Rudy Missy. We covered her $8,100 phone call back in 2003.
Just think about the professional failure here. A sales ring full of professional cattle people experts who dedicated their lives to this walked away from her.
And why? The consensus reason for dismissal. An unbalanced rump.
An unbalanced rump. If you applied that level of scrutiny to most cows today, half the barns in America would be empty. That is how narrow the focus was back then.
Matt Steiner made the contrarian bet. He didn't even see the cow in person. He bought her by phone for $8,100.
Just incredible.
That seemingly small, slightly flawed purchase produced Siegel Bay Super Sire and Mountfield SSI DC Mogul. That lineage not only led to the 2014 Global Cow of the Year, but generated hundreds of millions in global semen sales.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, all from a cow rejected for a minor physical imperfection. The lesson for every breeder sitting on the fence is this. How many missies are culled every year because they don't quite fit the rigid conventional scorecard?
Exactly. Because their udder angle is 5 degrees off, or their frame isn't exactly the type the judges want, Steiner demonstrated the necessity of independent judgment.
And the story of Stookey Elm Park Black Rose is even more dramatic because she was literally salvaged from that financial wreckage we just discussed.
She was purchased during the fire sale, right?
Yes. Black Rose was a distressed sale heifer purchased by Louis Prange during the absolute height of Jack Stookey's catastrophic financial collapse. She cost a measly $4,500.
Imagine the scene creditors milling about, the urgency, the chaos, and someone having the clarity to spot the genetics in the middle of a business crisis.
She became the foundation of a massive red and white dynasty, producing modern show winners like Lady Rose Caught Your Eye. That $4,500 purchase, made in the middle of an institutional collapse, yielded generational wealth.
That is the ultimate second chance story. It proves that sometimes the best genetics need a crisis to reveal their true value. They need someone paying attention when everyone else is focused on the financial panic.
The genetic quality endures, even when the business model around it is disintegrating.
Then you have commissar Lori Sheik. Her legacy isn't about being safe from disaster, but about sheer, unstoppable durability across multiple eras.
She built an empire that produced 4 different millionaire bulls.
4.
A staggering number that speaks to a level of consistent functional transmission rarely seen. And the timeline is the key proof point. Descendants of Lori Sheik were still winning Holstein Canada's Cow of the Year award 27 years after she herself won the inaugural honor back in 1995.
27 years. That kind of generational consistency is not luck. It transcends fluctuating indices, changing breed preferences, and the entire shift from traditional linear scoring to genomics. That is intentional breeding focused on deep functional traits.
Fertility, productive life, components that ensure a cow lasts.
And we must briefly mention the two sires who define this genetic tension. Pawnee Farm, our Linda chief from the 60s and 70s, who created those massive production gains by contributing nearly 15% of the breed's modern genome.
He's the source of both the production gains and the inbreeding concentration we're dealing with today.
He is the root of the $6.7 billion problem we started with. Contrast that historical figure with Genosaurus Captain in the 2020s. Captain, with his 7 consecutive #1 TPI runs, became the proving ground for whether the modern genomic selection systems can actually deliver on their promises of predictability.
So we're dealing with the lingering consequences of the 1970s while desperately trying to prove out the technology of the 2020s, all in the same herd. It's an insane juggling act.
Which transitions us perfectly to part 3, the battlefield. We need to talk about the relentless market forces that are demanding an immediate, calculated response from every operation. And nothing defined 2025 quite like the beef on dairy reckoning.
This is the intersection where immediate cash flow for survival collided head-on with long-term genetic viability. It's the tightest margin decision a producer has to make right now.
The adoption explosion is absolutely undeniable, and it happened fast. American Farm Bureau data showed that 72% of U.S. dairy farms now use beef genetics.
72%, up from basically zero a decade ago.
CattleFacts confirmed that crossbred calf production exploded from 50,000 head in 2014 to 3.2 million in 2024, with projections hitting 6 million by 2026. This isn't a trend, it's a structural industry shift.
The economics are too compelling to ignore. That 3-day-old crossbred calf delivers $800 to $1,000 cash flow immediately. You eliminate the cost of milk powder, the feed, the labor, the death loss risk, and that 2-year wait.
It is the ultimate survival mechanism in a tight margin environment. It lets you monetize the bottom end of your herd instantly. But here is the problem that ties back to the $6.7 billion figure. You are effectively trading your genetic future for today's cash.
And the market is shouting the long-term cost at us. We cited the USDA number earlier. Replacement heifer prices hit that national average of $2,870.
And pushing past $3,200 in certain regions.
This historic high is directly driven by the success of the beef on dairy strategy, because suddenly everyone is short on quality of dairy replacements.
The hard math is in the replacement ratio, which is the amount of seed corn you have left. The dairy herds ratio dropped to a critically low 27 dairy heifers expected to calve for every 100 cows.
27 to 100, that is a dangerously thin ratio.
We are quite literally eating our seed corn. We are consuming the future equity of the herd for immediate calories today.
But I have to play the devil's advocate here. If I'm a farmer who had a tough Q3 with unexpected feed price spikes, that $800 to $1,000 calf check is absolutely real money today. It pays the vet bill. It keeps the bank from calling.
Right.
For a significant portion of producers, this isn't a long-term strategic decision. It's a short-term survival decision to make it to the next quarter.
And that reality is completely valid. But we need to help you, the listener, distinguish between strategic use and reflexive use. Strategic use is disciplined. You use beef genetics on your bottom 20 to 30% of cows.
And critically, that bottom 20% must be genomically verified as poor performers.
Precisely. You're not guessing. You're confirming which animals have low predicted transmitting abilities, low PL, low DPR, poor health traits. You're monetizing the verified genetic tail of your herd while protecting your core.
That protects your genetic engine.
Yeah.
Reflexive use, however, is breeding beef on anything that moves just because the cash feels good this month. That guarantees you're going to be short replacements later.
You will either have to pay $3,000 plus per head to buy someone else's genetics, or you'll be unable to expand when the market finally rewards growth.
So the answer isn't, don't use beef on dairy. The answer is, use it like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer.
Right.
And verify that bottom tier immediately.
Okay, let's now talk about the silent killer in the genetics conversation, what we've called the hidden inbreeding tax. This is the underlying mechanism that underpins the entire $6.7 billion figure we opened with.
It's silent because it doesn't show up as a line item on your monthly income statement, but you feel it every single time you have to call the vet out for a difficult freshening or a cow that just won't breed back.
The soaring rate is staggering and frighteningly fast. Holstein inbreeding in U.S. herds climbed from a manageable 5.7% in 2010 to a critical 15.2% by 2020.
That is a geometric explosion in lack of diversity fueled by the overuse of a few elite sires. And we're not slowing down. Industry projections show we're heading toward 18 to 22% by 2030.
Let's put that in perspective.
The established threshold where inbreeding depression becomes economically significant is 6.25%. We are approaching triple that level industry-wide. We are sacrificing viability for temporary predictability.
And the financial hit is real and quantifiable, thanks to the data coming out of the USDA ARS on net merit revisions. The analysis shows that each 1% increase in inbreeding costs roughly $23 to $25 off a cow's lifetime net merit value.
That is a direct, measurable tax.
Yeah.
But what does that $23 mean for me in the barn?
It translates directly into measurable hits on the traits that keep cows in the parlor: reduced fertility, lower productive life, and higher susceptibility to disease. Your fresh cows are sicker because their immune system lacks diversity. Your breed backlights are lower because fertility is one of the first traits to suffer.
So that is why my fresh cow problems are getting worse. That's why I'm seeing more early culling pressure, even on my best-looking heifers. My herd's infertility issues are compounding despite better management and expensive protocols.
It's not necessarily your management, it's the compromised genetic resilience you're inheriting. Inbreeding reduces the cow's overall robustness. She needs perfect management and high inputs just to reach an average performance, and she's still more likely to fail.
So if the tax is real, what is the value of reducing it? Does the data back up the pain of searching for diverse genetics?
It absolutely does, and this is the good news. We saw documented case studies extension programs tracking 500 cow herds that consciously reduced inbreeding from 13% down to 8% over 3 years.
And the result?
Those herds saw $75,000 to $94,000 in improved lifetime cow value across the herd.
Wow. If you take the high end of that, that's $188 per cow. That is a massive return on investment for simply managing genetics intelligently. That's a bigger check than you'd get from most premium contracts, and it's completely internal.
This should be your single most urgent, actionable threshold this week. You must look at your inbreeding coefficients. If you are not looking at them, really looking at the relationship coefficient on your reports, start immediately. You need to stop maximizing the TPI score and start maximizing diversity.
What is the practical target? I'm looking at the projected inbreeding of a bull on my herd. What number is my hard stop?
Set your sire search filters to a 6% max projected inbreeding or lower. That 6% is your non-negotiable threshold because it keeps you below that economically significant depression point. If your current genetics provider cannot easily give you that data and help you filter, that is a massive structural problem you need to solve this week.
You need diversity, and you need transparency.
Speaking of structural problems and transparency, we have to address the elephant in the room that changed the future of supply in 2025. Industry consolidation.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, the pending combination of Select Sires and ST Genetics. This is segment 6.
This merger is a seismic event. It fundamentally alters the landscape of semen supply in North America and globally. When you combine the largest farmer-owned co-op with one of the most technologically dominant private companies, you create an entity with unprecedented market power.
Think about the resulting market control. When this combination is finalized, just 3 companies will control roughly 70% of the genetics flowing into North American herds.
70%. That is historic.
And the argument for consolidation is always efficiency and accelerated innovation. They say it allows them to invest more in R&D and bring better genetics to market faster.
Which is true, in theory.
That's the spin. The reality is that consolidation concentrates genetic control precisely when genetic diversity is most needed, right when we are fighting the $6.7 billion inbreeding tax. When 3 entities control that much of the market, they control the direction of the breed.
You mean they decide which traits are emphasized? If they decide to chase pure volume and let fertility slide, my options for finding a bull that prioritizes fertility for my struggling herd just dried up.
My analysis is stark here. When 3 companies control 70% of the market, you are no longer a customer. You are a captive market. If they prioritize milk volume over productive life, you have extremely few alternatives for diversifying that risk or maintaining leverage.
That's terrifying, because if I wait until the ink is dry on the merger documents, my options are completely gone. So what's the tactical response? How does a producer regain options and leverage?
You nailed it. The window for action is closing now. Producers need to diversify suppliers immediately. I don't mean buying one bull from a different catalog. I mean establishing genuine, strong working relationships with multiple genetic suppliers, the big ones and the smaller niche outfits that specialize in outcross genetics.
That ensures genetic breadth, giving you access to non-mainstream bloodlines to fight the inbreeding tax. But it also gives you crucial negotiating leverage. If you rely on one company for 90% of your semen, you are entirely at their mercy when it comes to pricing and product availability.
Diversification is your hedge against becoming a captive buyer.
And while we're talking about massive forces, we should probably touch on the political context, that endless U.S.-Canadian trade situation. President Trump has been beating the same drum on Canadian dairy and their supply management system since 2018, and frankly, the political argument is tiring.
It is, because regardless of your political stance, the economic outcome of the Canadian system is undeniable. Supply management creates stability.
Full stop. Production quotas match demand, minimum prices are guaranteed, and high import tariffs stabilize their domestic market.
And that stability means Canadian dairy farm debt-to-asset ratios have remained substantially more stable over the past decade than those in the U.S., where producers are subjected to constant wild swings and margin crises.
So the lesson for the American producer isn't about the moral superiority of free markets or supply management. It's about the structural vulnerability inherent in your system.
My take, and I stand by this, American producers need to analyze why their system creates such vulnerability, rather than just arguing about the fairness of the Canadian system. Stop expecting trade negotiations to solve the structural problems in your mill check.
Budget for volatility. Lock in your prices and feed costs when you can, and don't assume the government is going to solve the problem of market instability for you. That's the only way to be a survivor.
All right, let's wrap this entire deep dive into 2025 with the most critical part, the actionable takeaways. A farmer is heading into 2026 planning right now. 3 things. High-impact, non-negotiable instructions from this entire deep dive.
3 things you can implement this week that cost almost nothing but will save you tens of thousands of dollars and significantly improve herd longevity down the road.
Number 1, this week, today, not next month, pull those inbreeding coefficients on your genetic reports. The data shows that the difference between 13% and 8% inbreeding is a direct $150 to $188 per cow in lifetime value. Set your sire search filters to a 6% max projected inbreeding. Make that non-negotiable.
Number 2, and this is crucial for protecting your core herd while still monetizing beef on dairy. Before spring breeding, you need to identify your bottom 20 to 30% for beef cross. This selection must be genomically verified. Do not make this selection based on type or intuition. Protect your genetic core by only breeding beef to your verified, low-merit, poor-performing animals.
And finally, number 3. This year, establish working relationships with multiple genetic suppliers. Do it now, before the ink dries on the select sires genetics combination. The consolidation window is closing, and once those 3 companies own 70% of the market, you lose all leverage. Diversification is survival architecture.
That's our 2025 wrap-up. Honestly, if you only read one Bullvine article or listen to one deep dive before you start making those critical spring breeding decisions, make it this one. It ties together the failures, the successes, and the catastrophic costs of delayed action on inbreeding and consolidation.
All 16 source stories, from Juan Moreno's rise to the explanation of the Section 46 collapse to the $4,500 Black Rose purchase, are linked for you at www.thebullvine.com. Go there, read the source material, and implement these 3 changes today. Subscribe for daily deep dives. Next up, we're covering the potential impact of ongoing margin crises on the demand for specialized feed efficiency genetics and whether that will replace TPI as the primary ranking system in 2026.
Don't wait for the shifting ground to settle. Move with it. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.